Okay. Hi, everybody. It is Wednesday, and we are so excited tonight to have Ellie Alexander here with us for Nothing Bundt Trouble, the newest in her Bake Shop Mystery series. If you guys are not familiar with her, she's the author of the Bake Shop Mystery. She's also the author of the Sloane Krauss series, and then as Kate Dyer-Seeley, she's also written two really fantastic cozy series as well. So Nothing Bundt Trouble just came out yesterday. I have the galley because it's bigger and it appears better on screen. But we also have at the store some really great signed book plates. We've got orange and blue ones that she has sent for all of our copies of it. You can order those at murderbooks.com. If you are tuning in on Facebook, if you have any questions while we're chatting, drop them in the comments. McKenna is going to be checking them and feeding them to me. And we also have some great prizes that we're going to be giving out over the course of the evening, and I will let Ellie Vanna wipe those for us. But just to start off, how are you tonight, Ellie?
I'm doing so well. Thanks for having me.
And you guys, if you have been tuning into our live stream events, you know, McKenna and I have been doing most of them. We're really excited tonight to have Rebecca with us. She is one of our part-time people at the store, and we haven't seen her in so long because it's just been kind of the core full-time people working. How are you tonight, Rebecca?
I'm good. It's nice to see other people's faces.
So before we get into our chat, Ellie, do you want to tell us a little bit about the new book, Nothing Bundt Trouble?
Nothing Bundt Trouble. Absolutely. I had so much fun writing this book. This book is an origin story. I'm such a fan of comic and superhero books and movies that I love a good origin story. And actually, this idea has kind of been like in the back of my head for a while. I had been thinking about it. And I just finally decided at book 11, it was time for Jules to kind of have some closure about her past. And so that's really the theme of this book. We're flashing back to the 1980s, the decade of my youth. I'm a big fan of the 80s. So not only do we get all of the 80s awesomeness, but this is really a book about kind of coming full circle. The series is long running at this point in time. And there's kind of been this theme of loss that's run through the books. And I think she needs this level of closure before we can go on to what's next.
Awesome. And if you guys are tuning in and you were new to the series, because this one kind of is sort of a flashback, kind of the main story almost takes a little bit of a pause. So if you haven't read them, I mean, definitely start with Meet Your Baker and read all of them because they're fantastic. But I think this is also a really great place for you to jump in if you're new to the series as well.
Oh, totally. You know, and I almost always tell people, readers, to start from the beginning of a series. I have to do that myself. Yeah. But because this is kind of a standalone in some ways, you could definitely start with this book.
Yeah. Rebecca, are you you have to read them in series order person, or are you just jump in? Yeah.
No, got to go in order.
It depends. Like if it's a series that I haven't read before and it's a really long running one, sometimes I'll just jump in like late, kind of just because I don't want to go back all the way. But also sometimes just to see if we're hand selling it to customers, how easily can you jump into this in the middle of it without having to go back. So it just depends.
Yeah.
So Ellie, can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration for the series?
Yeah, so the series is set in Ashland, Oregon, which is where I am now, although you can't really tell, I'm in my basement. The main protagonist, Juliet Montague Capshaw, is a professional pastry chef who left to go travel the world. She worked on a boutique foodie cruise ship for about 10 years. She had to leave Ashland. If people are unfamiliar with Ashland, Ashland is home to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. So the plaza and downtown are all themed like an Elizabethan village. There's this level of charm, and then there's also a very eclectic community of actors and playwrights, and that's true in real life as well. So in the beginning of the series, Jules comes home to Ashland to kind of heal a broken heart and help run her family bake shops. And as the series has developed, she has definitely fallen in love with the place and has struggled about her love life. But I can't say anything more about that because spoilers, right?
And so also for people who are tuning in and maybe don't know what we mean when we say cozy mystery, how do you define a cozy, Ellie?
I define a cozy as something that takes place in a small town or village Not a lot of gratuitous violence. The murder tends to take place off stage, and the focus is on the community kind of coming together and helping the protagonist to solve the murder. And usually our sleuths are bakers and pastry chefs, people who would not normally be invited on a crime scene.
So Rebecca, I know that you are usually of the bloodier, the gorier, the better reader, but I know that you have recently come kind of to the dark side of cozy mysteries. So what is it about the cozies that are so different than what you usually read that you enjoy?
I like feeling happy when I finished it, which is a really unusual feeling. I read really dark stuff. But I like the kind of lightheartedness, and it just feels like you're sitting down, you've got a nice, like a hot cup of tea or a hot cup of coffee, and it's like catching up with old friends.
Yeah. So you're saying you don't feel happy when you finish a Joe Nesbo book?
I just want them to end normally. It's just a different kind of feeling.
It's a different happiness.
So Ellie, do you read in the cozy genre, or are you also of the I'm going to read as bloody as I can get? Where do you fall on the spectrum?
You know, I am an eclectic reader. I read anything I can get my hands on, and I tend to read the same way that I binge TV shows. I'll go through one genre for a few months and then kind of satiate myself. So I was on a historical fiction kick. I was on a historical mystery kick. Right now I'm feeling very sci-fi-ish. I don't love true crime, but I like a bloody, like old school Sherlock style. Yeah, but I'm open to anything. I tend to not read cozies when I'm writing one because I don't want somebody else's vibe to get in my head. So when I'm between books, I'll read a cozy.
And so I know a lot of times cozies have kind of a hook, like you said, they're knitting or they're baking. There's always usually some kind of usually tied to a business, a bookstore, bakery, something like that. So when you were working on the series, did you know early on that they were going to be bake shop mysteries for these?
Yeah, so the series was originally pitched as Gilmore Girls with murder. You can see my Gilmore Girls print.
And I have my Luke's coffee shop shirt on.
Which I love. I need that shirt. Food growing up for me was such a love language. My parents were both home bakers. My mom was more like your Betty Crocker style. She'd slap, ingredients together and her cakes were lopsided. My dad taught Shakespeare. And so he, to this day, still likes to craft like a beautiful layered cake and hand pipe it and make his own apricot preserves. And so when I was thinking about this series and setting it here in Ashland, which is home to Shakespeare, I definitely thought that baking had to be a theme for sure.
Yeah. And so Rebecca is also a super skilled baker. She sent us pictures of these cakes that she's made that are just amazing. So Rebecca, when you're reading the books, do you just want to like drop everything and start baking?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
I have to admit, I am not the biggest baker or cooker. I don't cook a whole lot, but I have to say the first time that I've actually been tempted to make recipes out of any of these books have been Ellie's series, and I've made the curry chicken. I've made the cilantro chicken soup. There's at least one more I think that I've tried, and the recipes are always really great. So McKenna has mentioned to me that we have two people that are watching, Lily Ann and Sophia, who are both starting the series now. So I think that maybe we should give them sticker packs. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
You want to show them do you have a sticker pack?
I don't have the entire sticker pack in front of me, but this is the new favorite. It is the holographic headphones from this 1980s flashback book. Isn't that awesome?
One of my favorite things about cozies is you see like they try to like sneak a skull somewhere in the cover, and I think that yours always have some really creative ways of doing that.
My kiddo was really happy because he had the idea for the skull and the Walkman, and they actually did it, so he was very pleased with himself.
So Lily Ann also asks, have you ever felt bad about killing a character?
No, I think as mystery writers, we get to explore our shadow side more than anyone else, which I think is very healthy, actually. I tend to exact my revenge on the page. So I'm not someone who harbors a lot of ill will, but I do have a deep sense of what's right and wrong. So for example, if you're awful to your barista or your server or your book slinger, then you're going to end up dead in a book. And I'm okay with that.
And then Sophia asks, do you ever draw from your own personality or characteristics to base a character off of?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. I think Jules is sort of an amalgam of me at different stages in my life. And then every character in the series is inspired in some way by someone I know. Jules and her mom, Helen, are very close. And Helen is inspired by my mom, who was a counselor and this home baker, like I talked about. She was just such an active listener. So she would pull people in, especially my friends and I, and get us talking around, a plate of delicious bundt cakes or whatever. And then the professor, who is a favorite, he is Ashland's lead detective, and he quotes Shakespeare at will. And he's loosely based on my dad, who to this day, if he's in my house, is quoting Shakespeare or sonnets, soliloquies, you name it.
So you mentioned bundt cakes again. So the three of us are having a bundt cake off. So I think we should maybe kind of slowly tease everybody with our bundt cakes. Let's start with Rebecca. Do you want to show us yours?
The real baker amongst us.
Right.
Right.
The real baker who apparently doesn't know what an actual bundt tin is, because I thought I had one. And then this afternoon, when I finally got my act together, it turned out that I didn't have a bundt tin. So mine looks kind of like a giant slice of pineapple from a it's lemon with lemony glaze, and my kids and my husband have been trying to get their hands on it all evening.
Can I have a piece now?
Oh, the agony.
Well, even if it might not be like in a bundt tin, it looks delicious. So I'm with them. I would be asking you for a piece if I was there too.
Yeah, I think you got to slice into that sucker. And I also love that you call it a bundt tin. That's so British of you, even though I know you're Irish.
No, my husband's Irish. I'm English.
Okay, that's right. Okay. Phew.
So what do you call it then?
A cake, a bundt pan, I would call it.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of my favorite things about working with Rebecca on Sundays is the customers that come in and ask her if she's from Australia. We're like, no. Okay, so we've got some more questions from the crowd. Sherry asks if you've always had a backstory in mind when you started writing the series.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. I am a huge plotter. I do a lot of planning. I spend a lot of time in my head. So when I started the series, I have an individual arc for each book where we start and we're taking Jules on some sort of journey. But then I have a bigger arc for who she's meant to become. And the arc that runs and stretches through this storyline is the idea of finding home. Can you come home again? And if you've left and gone away, how does home change? And so I think I had a real intention when I started the series to kind of explore that. Now, granted, I know that we're talking about books that are titled like Nothing Bundt Trouble. So they are light and fun reads, but I do like to weave some depth. And I hope that, readers take away that piece of it, that you feel attached to these characters who I want to feel real, even though, you're reading something where a pastry chef is maybe solving a crime. Maybe. She doesn't always solve the crime either, which is, I think, funny.
That's one of the things I loved about the first one is, usually when you start these cozy series, like the detective is like, somehow they have this like natural ability to like solve mysteries. And then Meet Your Baker, like, she's just like fumbling around accusing everybody of murder and then having to apologize later. It's really nice to see somebody kind of charmingly bumble their way through an investigation. And yeah, I think you bring up a good point. They do have really punny titles and they are, a baker solving mysteries. But as you read the books, you and I have talked about this before. You write about grief in such a a really beautiful way. And you also, you know, with the found family, with your characters, there's so much heart and there's so much depth in them. And I think that's one of the things that makes it kind of one of my favorite cozy series.
Yeah, I don't think we can escape, you know, our own experiences as people. And so that has to find its way into writing, and loss has been part of my life. And so that just kind of naturally comes through. But I think, you know, hopefully it makes the experience richer for people.
Let's see. So Lily Ann asks if you have a favorite book in the series.
That's like saying you have a favorite kid. I do. I mean, I always have the book that I'm working on at the moment tends to be my favorite because I'm fully immersed in whatever I'm writing. I'm actually 2 books ahead, so I'm working on book 13 right now. And so I would say at the moment it's my favorite, but if I'm being completely honest, this particular book, Nothing But Trouble, I cried my way through writing this book in a way that was so unexpected and cathartic. And I think I really had to write this book as much as I needed to write it for Jules. Because it is really, we meet her dad for the first time. The idea for this emerged because I lost my mom young too. She died when I was in my late 20s. And I think maybe 2 or 3 years after she died, I found this whole stack of letters, which was such a gift to go back and like read her words and see her writing on the page and everything. And I wanted to give that to Jules. And so this whole book is told really through the voice of her father through these journals. And so I think that there's so much depth and understanding that she's going to do as a character because of this experience of going back in time. So I think this one's my favorite.
I thought doing it as a journal and not just having it be like, okay, here's a Jules chapter, here's a chapter with her father, where it was sort of a dual timeline. I thought doing it kind of reading his journal entries with the professor kind of sitting there in the bake shop was a really interesting way to be able to frame it and make it kind of sort of a prequel to the series, but not kind of set in the past at the same time.
Right. It was a challenge too. I feel like I kind of wanted to push myself as a writer because we are 11 books into the series. And as a reader of longtime series, I get frustrated if it starts to feel dialed in. So I would say this is one of the harder books. I rewrote it 3 or 4 times because initially I had just done that. We were going back and forth chapter to chapter and it wasn't working. This one I think has a slightly different pace than some of the other books in the series because of that, but I'm super happy with it. And I think one of the analogies that I love if we're thinking about the past is thinking about driving. And we spend a lot of time as adults looking through the rear view mirror, which is tiny, when really we should be looking ahead at that giant mirror that's out in front of us. And so Jules needed this little glimpse to be able to like crack herself open to what's coming next.
So Mary, who made the scones, asks, does Jules still surprise you all these books later?
Oh my gosh, yes, so much so. Which I don't even believe as I'm saying this that that's true, because when before I see a little fly, sorry. Before I started writing, I would go hear writers speak and they would talk about their characters doing these things that were outside of them. And I thought that was totally made up because that had never happened to me in my previous writing experiences. Did she get cake? Come on, just give her some cake. Okay. We need a report on how the cake was. Okay. That's the beautiful thing about a Bundt. Even if it fails, it tastes good. Anyway, I think, yes, every time I sit down to write a book, I have a plan and a vision in mind. And half the time I'm partway through a draft and it takes itself somewhere else totally unexpected and usually better than what I had intended.
And so, and from McKenna Mary, because of her great question and because she's been super active in the comments, I think that we should maybe give her a coffee pack.
Ooh, okay, yeah, sure. I have a 3-pack of coffee. We have Andy, Carlos, and Juliet's blends. And they all, like Andy's blend is Tort's signature coffee, bright and refreshing, where Carlos has like some spicy chocolate notes.
So if you guys have not checked out her Ellie's website, you definitely should. She's got so much Tort good stuff, and she's also got Nitro stuff from the other series. There's these really great tort mugs. There are really awesome tort aprons. There's the coffee. There's so much cool stuff out there. So how did you, what's the process for being able to create these blends of coffee? Did you go like to a local coffee brewer and say like, hey, this is what I want?
Yeah, I actually happen to have really good friends who are coffee roasters. My dear friend Sadie, who owns Cafe X, and she goes to Mexico. She's from Mexico and goes back every year and supports these local organic farms that are all run by women. And I sat down with her. She's read the series, and I said, could you create a special tort blend? And they did. So that was a really fun process because, of course, I had to taste a lot of their delicious coffee to make sure we got it right.
So Rebecca, do you have any questions while I'm just sitting here chatting away?
I was going to say, I need to get me some of that coffee. I know where I'm going after this. Which coffees do you like best?
I really love, I love a dark roast. I'm a sucker for anything that's really dark. The darker, the better. I like things that kind of have that like nice lingering mouthfeel. I spend a lot of time researching coffee and like the baking process for writing the series because I want that to feel authentic too. So I have a lot of random coffee knowledge in my brain now.
Yeah.
And I think my next evolution is I'm going to have to start my own roasting company. I'm not really. No, I'm kidding. I'm not. It's just me taking up space.
From all the recipes that you've included in all the books, which one is your personal favorite?
The very first recipe in Meet Your Baker is for my mom's raspberry Danish. And I don't know why it was called a Danish because it's almost just like a cinnamon rollish dough that you bake in a tin and you slather with raspberry jam and vanilla buttercream. Oh, it's amazing. My mouth definitely watered when I read that recipe and when she made it and she was describing it. I was like, okay, I'm going to have to try that one. You are. It's true. Have you been baking a lot in quarantine? Because I know that you are an actual legit baker, unlike John and I who fake it.
I have baked an insane amount of bread. I taught my daughter how to make scones and Victoria sandwiches and all these kind of things. But now I've had to stop because the problem I have is if I bake it, I eat it. And I need to stop eating it. That's the crux. So we go.
That is always the crux.
Yeah, but my son's birthday was a couple of weeks ago, so we baked him a big cake, and it's my daughter's birthday this weekend, so we're doing another big cake for her. She wants something Harry Potter, so I'm going to be busy back in the kitchen again.
What does a Harry Potter cake look like?
It's going to have a Gryffindor scarf around it. It's going to have, I've cheated and I've bought a golden snitch and a pair of glasses to put on it, and it's going to have the Marauder's footprints and her name and a big happy birthday thing. And
I love it.
It'll be on Instagram. You'll see it.
Okay.
So speaking of kind of recipes and baking, Sheila wants to know if you have made every recipe that's in the books, Ellie.
I have made every recipe that is in the books at least 3 to 4 times. What I do is when I'm working on a draft, like I'm writing book 13 right now, I will finish the entire first draft and then I go through a couple rounds of edits. Like I do a layer that is describing place. My first draft might be like, she sat, they talked. It's just blah. And so my second round of edits will be actually saying like, how did he move? Or what does the sky look out like outside, that sort of thing. And then I do that a few times. And then my last round of edits is the food. So if I'm working on a book, it might just be whatever is top of mind. I might say, a lemon cream bundt cake sounds delicious. But then in that last layer, I will go back through and pick out recipes that I might actually want to try. When I was first writing the series, it was a lot of my own recipes and family recipes. And now as the books have gone on, I have a lot of recipes. So I will go through and think like, could I actually bake that? I don't know. That one sounds way too hard. We'll just leave that for Jules. What could I really bake? Lime cookies. Yeah, I could try that. And so then there's a whole process, but I test every recipe 3 or 4 times. So my neighbors now will see me coming and they'll be like, no, we can't take another plate of whatever you're giving us. Too many cookies.
So are there any plans to potentially maybe do a cookbook at some point?
I would love to do a cookbook, but I need Rebecca on board because you have to make everything look beautiful. That's the problem. That is not my skill. Okay, let's do it.
I'm so keen to do that.
Okay. Alice, are you listening?
Because like Mary Kay Andrews, I know her books aren't kind of cozy bake shops, but like she has a cookbook. Joanna Flukes put out a cookbook. My God, I'm a bad bookseller because it's completely blanking. The woman that does the Goldie mysteries.
Diane Mott Davidson.
Yeah, Diane Mott Davidson. Like she did one, and they had like it was like a really cool mix of like recipes and then like little vignettes from the characters. Like there's so much fun stuff that you can play with there. So I would definitely buy a Torch Bake Shop cookbook for whatever it's worth for everybody watching out there. So Cindy asks, how did you come up with Sterling's personality?
Oh, well, so when I wrote Meet Your Baker, Sterling is Tort's sous chef. He's young. The whole staff at Tort is very young. And I like that. I feel like I have a lot of young people in my life. I have a teenager here in my house. And I think sometimes, this next generation gets a bad rap, but they're amazing. And I really want to write characters who are strong and they're kind of old souls too. So Sterling initially, I did not think was going to stick around. He's loosely based on a good friend's son. And I just loved him after I wrote the first draft. I thought that he was going to be a toss-away character. And one of the gifts I think about writing a long-running series is that I get to bring some of these secondary cast members forward now. So, Sterling has had a few books already where he gets to take center stage, and that's happening even more. There's a lot more in store for Sterling. That's all I can say at this point.
I think one of the things that's really great about your series and kind of what we're starting to see more in cozies and what's getting a lot kind of more people in them is that it is a younger cast of characters. For a long time, the genre was, women in their 60s kind of stumbling across bodies in the garden and solving mysteries. And it's really nice to see kind of the genre swing. I mean, because there's definitely a place for that. And I'm not dissing like Miss Marple or any of that at all. Y'all don't come for me, I promise.
No, we love it. Yeah.
But,
don't murder John.
It's nice to see books that have younger cast and that younger people can relate to, that really kind of pulls in a younger readership for cozies. And I think that we were seeing for a while too.
Yeah, and I think there's some amazing new series that are out that are doing that same thing. Vivian Chen's comes to mind.
Yeah, Vivian Chen's Death by Dumpling was actually Rebecca's gateway cozy when she started at the bookstore. It's like, I know you don't read these, you have to read this. And now she's like, when's the next one coming out?
Your gateway cozy. I love it.
It was my first cozy, and I'd heard John talking about it so much that I was like, okay, I have to pick this up and read it. And I just loved it. And then I got onto the Bake Shop series, and now I went down this whole big cozy rabbit hole.
I know, once you go cozy, it's hard to go back.
So while we were talking, I'm going to show off my Bundt Cakes. So I bought, thanks to Ellie pointing out that they made these, I got a Bundt Cake pan that was actually skulls. So mine are, I'm not knocking any of them over. They are red velvet skulls that look a lot creepier than I anticipated them. So those are mine. One's missing because my husband's birthday was last night, so he had one for his birthday cake when I baked them last night.
You just gave him one. That's it.
Well, somebody else also sent him like Tips Treats cookies, so he was like, "I'm gonna have one. I can't have any more sugar today." He already had a lot earlier in the day. So Lily Ann asks, how long does it take for you to finish a book, kind of roughly from when you start it to when you have turned it in?
I usually write really terrible first drafts. So it takes me 6 weeks to write a first draft. I'll spend a couple weeks. Right now, I'm just finishing edits for book 13, but already in the back of my head, I'm thinking about plots and ideas for book 14. That usually that kind of parallels. As I'm finishing one, I'm already thinking about what's next. So I'll do a deep outline, and that takes a few weeks, and then I'll write a terrible first draft, and then I walk away from it. I will not touch it for a good 2 or 3 months so that I can get distance from it, because I think if you try to edit something too soon, you can't see where things are falling apart. So I'll go do other stuff I'll make some buns. I'll go to bake shops, taste some coffee, that kind of stuff. And then I will come back to it and edit it. Like I said, at least 3 rounds of edits usually. That takes another month or 2. So from start to finish, I would say now it takes me about 6 months to complete a book. And then of course, once it gets sent to my editor, we go back and forth through edits and copy edits and all that good stuff. But yeah, from start to finish on my end before I send it off, 6 months.
So you mentioned kind of that period where you put it aside. Is that like when you pick up like the new Sloane Krauss and start working on that?
Exactly. I have found that for myself, I am a better writer if I have more than one project going on, because I will obsess and spend way too much. I won't be able to give myself that distance. I'll just keep thinking on an idea or something that's not working. Whereas if I just shift gears, if I set that aside and I focus my attention on something else, then I totally take myself out of it and I come back and read it and it's a brand new book to me.
So Sherry asks, how often do you do your 5 Things Friday?
I started this series of 5 Things Fridays and I was doing them faithfully every Friday until the pandemic hit. And then I took a detour because I wrote a story collaboration. I did a spinoff for the Bake Shop Mystery where I had readers give me ideas and we would vote, and it was like a choose your own adventure, basically. So I'm bringing 5 Things Fridays back, starting not this Friday, but a week from Friday. And I have a brand new series that I'm going to be doing 5 Things Fridays live on Facebook. So I'm super excited. I'm going to have guests. I'm going to have all kinds of fun stuff.
Very cool. I am super excited about the collaboration. I wasn't reading any of it as it was happening. I was kind of keeping an eye on it. I was waiting for it to all be finished. So now that I've already read Nothing But Trouble, I'm excited to go dip into that because I haven't read any of it.
What was so surprising about that project is, these readers would be like, well, no, this can't happen because that's not part of, the canon. I'm like, what is canon? Wait, how is that word coming up? But I have an idea where I might give a nod to a character that readers came up with in the new book. I think that'd be super fun.
Well, so Nothing But Trouble, is this number 10 or is this number 11 in the series?
11.
So yeah, I mean, if you've written 11 books in a series, there is definitely a very solid canon there. Like 11 books is very canon worthy.
No, that's crazy.
So Sherry also asks, so if you're basing a character on somebody, do you let them know?
Oh, I think all of the characters who are long running and recurring are pieces of people I know. So Lance is 2 or 3 of my dear friends mashed together, that sort of thing. So they all know, people like that know. The one character who I love to hate is Richard Lord. He is Jules' nemesis. He runs this seedy motel in Ashland. And he is based on a real person who was a former boss of mine. And that person definitely does not know because he's not portrayed nicely. And he wasn't nice. He was horrible.
I love the little glimpses of Richard in Nothing But Trouble because so much of the cast is young. There's not a whole lot of kind of Jules bumping into through in the book people that she knew growing up. So it was really, really fun to see kind of those early glances at Richard still being terrible, in the 80s.
Totally. I gave him a little tiny touch of redemption because it has to seem semi-real, but he's just a buffoon.
So I have another question from Sherry, but since she's asked a couple of really great questions, I think maybe it's time to give away another prize. So maybe the mug.
Sure.
Yeah.
You want to see the mug? It's double Bundt. So we have Murder Bundt on this side and then the headphones on that side.
Awesome.
So you can flash back.
Those headphones are awesome. So do you have any cover input for the books?
I do have cover input. I feel so fortunate. The cover artists at St. Martin's are just incredible. They do the best covers, hands down, I think. I always send my editor an idea, an overview of what the book is going to be. So the new book this flashback is the new book, I guess. But the next book that's coming out, book 12, is going to be ice cream themed. So I sent her pictures of a couple ice cream shops in Ashland and just general ideas. And then they always take it and run with it.
Ice cream themed, you're doing an event with Abby Collette soon, aren't you?
Yeah, tomorrow. Uh-huh.
Oh, her book is so good. We chatted with her last week and she's just absolutely delightful. It was really fun.
I just devoured it. It was so great. And I wanted ice cream the whole time.
I missed who asked the question, but somebody asked, what was it like in the books trying to plan out and plot a remodel of the bakery?
Oh, yeah. That happened because that really happened in real life. I take a lot of inspiration from the real places in Ashland that have inspired the series. So many years ago, when I was first coming to Ashland before we moved here, there was a bake shop in the basement of the real bake shop. It was called Munchies, and it flooded. And so that storyline is all based on reality. I mashed them together because that happened many years ago, but I just love that concept. So the Ashland Creek runs along the Kaye, and sometimes when we get big thunderstorms, which is rare here in the Northwest, the Kaye will flood and it will come up, the water will come up through all these basement properties. I actually initially had thought maybe that there was going to be a murder that way, but it didn't end up happening. But perhaps in a future book, we'll see.
And so that question was from Keith, McKenna pointed out. Thank you, Keith. That was a great question. Somebody also asked, I'm sorry, the Zoom chat isn't always the easiest to slide up and down in. Does the Shakespeare Festival play a part in the books from Ashland?
Oh, definitely, yes, yes. Shakespeare is huge. Of course, it's just devastating right now because Shakespeare's shut through next year, and Ashland relies on that tourism. So we're all very sad. But yes, OSF has been great. When I was first working on the series, they gave me extensive backstage tours. I have a friend who used to be the marketing director. They've been great. And in this new book, the Oregon Cabaret is featured, and that's also a real place. And they've been phenomenal too. They gave me so much insider information. It's this old funky church that they revamped and turned into an amazing cabaret. You know, you hear cabaret and you think super cheesy, but no, the productions they put on this tiny stage are amazing.
And so that question was from Emily. Thank you, Emily. Jamie asked, what's the most unusual place you've been in the course of researching your books?
Ooh, what's the most unusual? Well, my very first series that I wrote as Kate was set up in the Portland area and featured this very bumbling journalist who billed herself as a true adventurer when in reality she had not an athletic bone in her body. And so I went and did a lot of research into these adventure things that she would do. So one of them sent me to the lava caves in the high deserts of Central Oregon, where you descend down hundreds of feet into these old lava tubes. That was super creepy and fun.
So Sheila asks if any of the Tort coffee is good iced, and do you prefer your coffee iced or hot with your baked goods?
Ooh, I prefer my coffee based on the seasons. So right now I'm in iced coffee season, but during the winter I would always have a hot cup of coffee. What about you guys? Rebecca, are you hot or cold?
It depends on where I'm having it. So if I have it at home, I have it hot. If I'm at the bookstore, there's a really good little coffee house next door, and I always have it iced from there.
Yeah.
But at home, or if I'm out somewhere, I normally have hot.
I'm more of a hot person. I was generally not a coffee person until, I don't know, probably like the last year. And now I just, getting up in the morning just requires a cup of coffee. So usually hot for me. So somebody asked how they can get autographed copies of the book. So we don't have autographed copies because it's hard to ship books back and forth and expensive. But Ellie was really kind enough to send us signed book plates. So we've got book plates to go with the books. You can order them at our website, murderbooks.com. You can give us a call. And we have them for not only Nothing But in Trouble, but if you order any of the books in the series, we will pop in a book plate for you. So thank you guys for asking that. So Dasha asks, is there a crossover in the works between the Sloane, Krauss, and Tort series? She says that would be so awesome.
So when we introduced this series, I did a short. It's called Trouble is Brewing. It was only available as an as an ebook, because it's just a short. It's like 50 pages. And that was actually the hardest thing that I've ever written. It's way harder to try to condense a lot of depth into 50 pages. Jules and Sloane meet at a brew fest in Ashland, and that kind of kicked off the Sloane series. But yes, at some point in time, I would love to do a full crossover where, I don't know, maybe Jules ventures out to Leavenworth, or they have some meetup where, well, this actually is a good segue into my Bundt, because I baked a Death by Chocolate Bundt. Dun, dun, dun. And I told these guys, I added a touch of chocolate stout for a little nod to Sloane. So it's chocolate on chocolate on chocolate.
This is amazing. And so, Dasha, that was a great question. So thank you for asking that. You will get another one of the sticker packs.
Sticker. I can't get it.
Yeah, awesome. So you can all comment or tell you in the comments how to get in touch with us to be able to do that. And if you guys have an opinion on whether or not you think Rebecca's Bundt or Ellie's Bundt or my Bundt, which one you like the best.
Let's show them. Let's show them. Okay, let's get another.
One more time. We have I keep waiting for one of these skulls to like slide off the. So comment in the question, or comment in the Facebook, and let us know who you think has won our Bundt off. Matt was like, why are you buying a skull Bundt pan? I'm like, one, it's awesome, and two, I work at a mystery bookstore. I can use this all the time.
I think that's going to become the signature when we have events again. That has to be like every author who comes, you make a custom skull Bundt. That's perfection.
I'm so bummed that we're not doing in-store events. The last time Ellie was at the store, after she was done, Rebecca and Ellie and I and my husband all went to Eureka Heights, one of the really great breweries in Houston, and we just got to sit and hang out and have beer, and that was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. It was the best.
I know they are doing beer to go, so just throwing it out there as a small business employee, like if you have like bookstores, restaurants that are doing takeout, if your favorite brewery is doing like drive-through stuff, go, please, 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 please support them. A lot of places are being closed because health reasons, like Eureka closed, none of their employees were sick, but they were like, well, when the governor said you have to close, but they were like, we don't know that we can do this safely. At the moment, Murder by the Book is still closed to the public. We're just doing curbside pickup stuff because, again, we don't know how to let people in safely and take care of our health and everybody else's health. So that's my plea out there. Go support your local businesses. Like if your local theater does gift certificates, stuff like that. Okay, so everybody is voting on their Bundts, and
your notes aren't here, Rebecca.
McKenna says everybody wants to eat. Everybody wants to eat Ellie's. People want to look at mine, and sorry, Rebecca.
My giant pineapple slice was never going to win. It's all good.
But it looks delicious, and again, all that matters is that it tastes good. So.
Always. And my tip for a failed Bundt is turn it into cake pops.
That's a
mash it up, add a little buttercream, you're good to go.
Cake pops, that's not a bad idea. My kids would definitely not complain.
No.
So we've got a couple more minutes, so if anybody has any last minute questions, definitely pop them up there. So I know, Ellie, the next book in the Bake Shop series is Chilled to the Cone, that comes out in December. Is December?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So when's the new Sloane Krauss book coming out?
The new Sloane Krauss book comes out October 1st, I believe, that first week of October, whatever that Tuesday is. It is titled Without a Brew. And I'm gonna, as soon as I finish edits for book 13 for Bake Shop, I'm switching to edits for book 5 of Sloane. I don't know what that title is yet.
It's crazy that you're like 5 in that series already. It feels like it just started.
I know. It feels like that to me too.
So how do you come up with the titles? Do you have like just a list of like puns that you're like, okay, I want to use it for this book? Is it a collaborative thing with you and your publishing team? How do your titles come about?
It's kind of all of the above. I always have a running list of titles on my whiteboard over here, or just like puns that I think would be great. And then it's a lot of back and forth. It's a family affair. My husband, son, and I will just like pun it up at the dinner table. When my kiddo was younger, I was worried that we would get notes home from school like, why is he so focused on murder titles? But it's all good.
My in-laws are very, very punny people. They're like, usually there's some point at a family gathering, I'm like, okay, no more. I just can't take anymore. So we're trying to find, I saw McKenna's chat popped up. I went like, when you're trying to find a graduation card for one of the nephews, there was one with a pun on it. I'm like, that's it, we get it. But since I wasn't going to the graduation party, I'm like, you make sure that I get credit for this pun card because I never take part in any.
I know who to call next time I need a title.
So lots of people are commenting that they love the virtual events because they feel like they get to participate so much more. McKenna says that there have been hundreds of comments and it's been a really great group. So thank you so much, everybody, for participating in these. We're having a blast with them here at the store. We're really hoping that once the world kind of rights itself and we're able to do in-store events again, we can still supplement some of our in-store stuff with things like this, because we get to talk to people like, if Ellie didn't make it, we could still be able to do something like this virtually. And we've been able to do them with authors that are overseas. So thank you guys so much for those comments. We really appreciate it. And I know, like Ellie, you were just kind of a master at social media with, your recipes and with the 5 Things Friday stuff. So was it easy for you to kind of make the transition into doing these virtual events like this?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because when I first kind of launched into that space, I was so resistant, just because if I know you, I want to hear from you. I want to learn about you. And that level of connection, I didn't know could exist in social. And I've been so blown away by developing relationships, like real authentic relationships with readers, with you guys. So I think it's been incredible. I mean, of course, in a perfect world, I would love to be, out having beers or whatever. But yeah, I think it's really amazing how deeply that can resonate. And one of the best things for me is also seeing readers. So like, especially with doing the story collaboration, I might put something out there, but then readers are making connections with each other too, which is just phenomenal.
So Sheila asks, any hints about Carlos and Jules and what might happen?
That is a good question, Sheila. Actually, I really feel like this book that just came out, Nothing But Trouble, is what Jules had to kind of go through to figure out what's next for her. That's definitely the theme of this one. I will tell you that she's going to make a decision once and for all about her love life in Chilled to the Cone. So you will know in December what she's going to do. And it's not what I thought she was going to do. I have had a plan from book 1 in terms of what I thought she was going to do. And it turned out that I was wrong, but I'm excited.
It's exciting that we're gonna have the answer. Like that's so exciting. Like it needs to be December now for lots of reasons, but mostly for that one. Natalie wants to know about the books that you wrote as Kate.
Yes. So I wrote an entire series called The Pacific Northwest Mysteries. That was my first set of books. The first book in that is Scene of the Climb. They feature Meg Reed. She loves all things pink and chocolate and gets sent out on these crazy adventures. Those are all loosely based on my early 20s. I spent 6 months backpacking through New Zealand and Australia. And it would be things like you could zip line down into a pub for a free beer. So I would do that, of course. And that series is 5 books because we start with an event at the beginning where her father is killed, and that subplot wrapped up naturally at book 5. So it was just kind of a nice place for me to end. And my energy was already kind of coming toward bake shop and other stuff. But I can imagine that at some point in time, I might revive that series after she's had a little time to go and mature. I say that series is like Bridget Jones in the wild. That's my best description.
And so before we head out, we've got one more sticker pack to give away. So we are going to give that to Gail. So Gail, congratulations. I wanted to mention a couple of, hey, Sean.
Did Sean get cake?
Not yet.
Okay.
I wanted to mention a couple of things that we've got coming up at the store. July is a crazy month for virtual events. I was just telling my husband, Matt, we have two Tuesday, we've got one Wednesday, Thursday, we've got two on Friday, and we've got another one on Saturday. So there's so much great stuff coming up. But since you were all probably here because you are cozy readers, I wanted to mention on July 21st, we're doing an event with S.C. Perkins, who is a local author who has a really great series set in Austin. We're all huge fans of those. Her second one, Lineage Most Lethal, is coming out that day. Carolyn Haynes also has a new book out. She writes the Sarah Booth Delaney mysteries. We're huge fans of those. She's been a big friend of the store for years. So they are going to be in conversation with Miranda James, who writes the Cat in the Stacks mysteries, who also used to be the manager at Murder by the Book. So that's coming up. Definitely tune in for that. And check out our website, murderbooks.com, for more of our virtual event stuff. If you popped into this halfway through, the whole event will be archived, so you can watch it on Facebook. We'll also get it uploaded to our YouTube in the next day or two. Ellie will have it on hers as well. I mentioned we are still doing curbside pickup and phone orders and mail orders, so you can reach us at 713-524-8597 for phone, murderbooks.com for online stuff. We've been talking with Ellie Alexander about her new book, Nothing But Trouble, that came out yesterday. As I mentioned, we've got signed book plates. We also have a handful of stickers, so who knows, you might find one of these skull stickers thrown in with your order. Ellie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has been an absolute blast. And Rebecca, thanks for tuning in too. It was so good to see you. You guys take care, and hopefully we will get to do this hopefully in the store again sometime soon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So fun to see you, and great job on your buns. I think everybody's a winner tonight.
Thank you. Y'all take care.
Bye.
Bye.